Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on.
Whatever it is, man, whatever it is at this point, we're obviously not wanted here, so let's get the hell out.
The One You Don't Shoot by Hectic He Tricked. If you've spent any time hunting up in northern Michigan, you've probably heard about it. Everybody's got a name for it. The Watcher, the Tall One. My granddad, though, he always called it the One You Don't Shoot. He told me about the first time he ran into it, sometime back in the 70s, near Torch Lake. He said it was one of those mornings where the air was so still it felt like the woods was holding its breath, perfect for hunting. He was tucked into his blind before first light, waiting, when this buck stepped out of the tree line. He swore it was the biggest he'd ever seen in his life. Rack, wide and heavy. Antlers looked like something carved out of bone for a king. He raised his rifle, finger curling on the trigger, and that's when he caught its eyes. He said they weren't deer eyes. Not at all. They looked aware, like there was someone else looking out through them. Someone older, someone who knew him better than he knew himself. And before he could squeeze the trigger, he heard it. Not out loud, not a sound in the air, but in his head, as clear as his own thoughts. Not me. He froze, hands locked and heart pounding, and the buck just stared back at him. And then it walked off, calm as anything, like it knew there wasn't a man alive who dared follow it. My granddad swore that he sat there for 10 whole minutes before he trusted his legs enough to climb down. When he got back to his truck, that's when he saw the dirt all around it, torn up with fresh tracks and hoof prints circling over and over again, like something had been waiting for him to return. Now, you'll hear a lot of hunters up that way tell similar stories if you know how to ask. Some say it's a spirit, some say it's just an old tale. But the warnings are always the same. Don't shoot it. Don't even raise your rifle. Some claim if you take the shot, you'll never make it out of the woods. You'll get turned around and lost, and they'll find your body weeks later, if at all. Others say you'll make it home, but it won't stay in the trees. It'll follow you back, and you'll hear it at night, hooves pacing outside your house, or worse, right under your window. I laughed at those stories most of my life and thought they were just campfire yarns meant to spook kids. Until last season. I was out near Robinson Road, same stretch of woods my granddad used to hunt. That morning the frost was thick and the woods were still, and then just like he'd said, a buck stepped into the clearing. And Lord, it was massive. Broadside, perfect shot. I raised my rifle, lined up the scope, and then it lifted its head. For just a heartbeat, I swear on my life, I saw its mouth stretch into something that wasn't right. Something like a smile. My stomach turned cold, and I lowered the rifle. I didn't say a word. And as I sat there, gripping the stock with shaking hands, I felt it. Like a thought that wasn't mine, pressed hard into my skull until I couldn't think of anything else. Good. Basement Evil by Judy B. I wanted to tell you something very disturbing that happened to me as I was coming into puberty. I believe I was between the ages of 10 and 13, but I'm not exactly sure. I might have been a little younger. I'm now 59 years of age. We lived in a small white house with an earthen basement, more like a cellar though, I suppose. No cement floor or walls. Our furnace was down there, as well as my mom's preserves, and we stored our winter fruit, and apples, etc. down there as well. As children, we would be sent down to bring up something for our mother all the time. We had a little dog and a female cat who used to go down there with us. The basement always smelled like fresh earth and musty molds, as are common in such places. However, at times there used to be a terrible odor, one that used to upset me, and the dog and cat too. Whenever this smell came around, they wouldn't go downstairs. The cat would just disappear and the dog would stand at the top of the stairs and growl and bark, and then usually take off. I guess I should mention a little bit about how we got down to the basement in the first place. The house was originally just a small 2-bedroom place with a veranda on the side. My brother and I shared a room until he turned around 8 or 9, and then my folks closed in the veranda and made it into a bedroom for him. There was a heavy trap door which led into the basement, and it remained the only entrance there as well. It was really heavy, about 2 or 3 inches thick, and to open it, we as kids had to lift it up and then rest it on our bended knees and then push it all the way up. My dad had put a large locking hinge of some sort to hold it up for us. There was a nasty presence down there when that smell came around, and it made itself known. At the time that this happened to me, I didn't know that my brother was having his problems with it as well. I only knew that something woke me up and came into my room by my door one night, but only came in just a little ways. Whatever it was, it called to me and wanted me to come to it. And not knowing whether it was real or not, like any child, I would just cover my head. But sometimes it would sound like my mom's voice and try to get me to come to it. And because I didn't go to it, I would just lay there in fear. This light would pulse larger and larger, and it seemed as this thing would get closer. The light only happened when it would seem to be angry when I wouldn't follow it, and at that point I would scream for my mom and dad, and then the light would get smaller and go out of my room, and down a short hall, like if you could even call it a hall, it was only about 3 feet long. I would see this thing turn around the corner, go past our bathroom, back into Nick's room, and then it would disappear. This happened off and on for about 3 years. Now, I should tell you my brother Nick's story, too. He knew that something was down there in the cellar, as it would wake him up sometimes. He would actually hear the trapdoor open, and he would wake up. And what he told me he saw was 2 red orbs that just felt bad, felt like hate. He said that as he got more frightened, they would get larger and the door would open more. He used to lay empty tin cans at an angle on the trapdoor or angle his chair so that it would go off balance if this happened when he was asleep. And he would wake up then. He told me that whenever this happened, he started to hate the thing himself, and the stronger his emotions got, the smaller the red orbs became. They would retreat and the trapdoor would close. One time, the thing got past him because he told me that on one of those occasions that it came to him, he followed it and it went to my room. And that's when I would scream and it would start coming back towards him, so he would duck into the bathroom and it would go by him back into his room and back down into the basement. He never told any of us about this until he was an adult, well into his 30s. He didn't want us to think that he was losing it, he said. When this thing would visit me, I would tell my folks, and they would always tell me that I was dreaming or had a bad nightmare, and that was that. But I always knew that it had happened. Since I spoke to Nick about it, now I believe it was real. About 15 or 16 years ago, I was telling my mom's older sister about things, and I said, "You probably will think I'm going for the loony bin here, but this is what happened," and I told her what I just told you. She in turn related to me something that my dad had told her, and now when I think about it, I remember my dad no longer going down into the basement himself. A little bit about my dad. He's passed away now. He was a true full-blooded Italian, originally from Italy, and he came to Canada when he was 14 years of age. He himself had a number of unusual events happen to him, seeing and hearing things. At any rate, My aunt told me that on one occasion when my mother had left him at home on his own for a few days to visit her sister in Surrey, BC, he was downstairs and something not nice chased him around the basement. She never told me what he saw, only that he came out to her place after it happened, completely white-faced and very upset. After that, he never went down to the basement alone. That house, it's still standing, and people never seem to stay there too long. I don't know if they're experiencing anything or not, I just noticed that it's always either for rent or for sale. My folks owned it from late 1952 to 1978, and it was sold to an elderly lady who lived there for a year or two and then sold it. And like I said, over the years it changed hands a number of times, and it's been rented out a lot. I believe it's for sale again. And I know that before Christmas of this last year it was, but I'm not sure if it still is or if it has been sold. It upsets me, though, when I see children living in it. I believe that they are the most vulnerable. I can't say if there were any other further occurrences after we left. I just know what happened to us. Anybody hearing this probably thinks I'm nuttier than a fruitcake, and I've been looked at weirdly by a few folks who I've told this to. But I talk about it anyway. People don't know what is out there that they can't see. I realize that not all entities are evil or a danger to anyone, physically or mentally. But they are there nonetheless, good and bad. Be they spirits who are tied here for some reason or another, or maybe something else entirely. The Watcher of the Forest by Fawkes and the Flowers. Before I begin, it's important to acknowledge that my encounter takes place in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada, home to and land of the Ojibwe of Fort William First Nation. I have a good friend who I will refer to as Annie. At the time of our encounter, Annie and I had been very close friends for approximately 4 years and had a lot of wacky adventures. She was not above toting us around in her parents' van as we blasted Meatloaf at obnoxiously high volumes with the windows down, cruising the streets of our city. We met and became friends in Winnipeg, Manitoba. If you know anything about Canada and its horrifying history of European colonization, you will know that the First Nations peoples are victims of mass genocide. I refuse to use the phrase attempted genocide because the continued erasure of this culture's rich history is an ongoing homicide against these people, their stories, and their spiritual practices. My story begins in September of 2018. Annie had just moved to Thunder Bay in the spring of 2017 to live with her partner Dan, who was born and raised there. Naturally, I missed her terribly and was quick to arrange a visit to more or less just be in her presence. While I was there, I enjoyed the company of Annie, Dan, and Annie's tattoo artist friend, Mo. One evening, I got tattooed by Mo, and we smoked some weed, and I watched Annie and Mo play a video game that I can't recall the name of at this time. Another evening, Annie made candles to give to loved ones as gifts, and I video called my new partner, who remained in Winnipeg, all the while breathing in the cool, fragile air and pacing around under a piercingly illuminated crescent moon. The mood of the entire trip was relatively lighthearted, though at times submitted to a more melancholy feel. Thunder Bay is no stranger to gray skies and light fog as it is along the northwestern shore of Lake Superior, making this type of nuanced characteristic seem par for the course. It was either my second or third day in the city, and Annie and Dan and myself decided to take advantage of the mild weather and spend the day outside exploring the rivers, springs, and general green space. Needless to say, these surroundings are very comforting to us all, so we were quite pleased to be climbing over jagged rocks and plundering down small embankments all afternoon. Ultimately, we agreed that a walk through the forest would be just what our souls needed to feel nourished. The wooded area was dense, but had clearings where people could either bike or walk down, and this particular forest was one that both Annie and Dan were very familiar with, and was often visited by them. I was in awe of all the different species of trees and birds, mushrooms and plants, and was so captivated by the vibrancy of the foliage that I lost myself in taking snapshots of every new moss-cloaked log that I could find. The bark of trees proudly displayed brooches of fungi, and the turning leaves shimmered with flecked kisses from the sun. We were enjoying our trogging around until the mood suddenly shifted. Less nuanced melancholy, and instead felt more ominous, dull, seeping. I'll never forget the moment that Annie and I looked at each other, reading each other's chilled expressions. We both heard it at the exact same time. Dan was a little further ahead of us on the trail, and we called to him. Yes, he heard it too. The sound was distant and breathy, yet echoed clearly in the spaces between the trees. The sound was distinctly that of some type of wind instrument, though I've never been able to discern what kind. I feel the need to emphasize that there was absolutely no one else anywhere in our vicinity, making the sound of this wind instrument at all audible nearly impossible, especially considering how crisply we could all hear it. As our eyes darted around the bristled giants with their brooches and sun-kissed leaves, Annie's eyes eventually connected with mine, and she said what I was thinking. We need to leave, now. Though the feeling gradually overcoming us was not what I would consider sinister, it was still not a very pleasant feeling. It felt more like contempt and displeasure that we were there. We didn't run along the path, but instead hurried our steps as if running would send shockwaves vibrating through the whole forest and throw off Earth's balance entirely. As we picked up the pace, not only could we hear the instrument in the distance, but we could also feel it. The music cloaked us in a translucent blanket of darkness and followed closely behind every step of the way. Annie and I didn't speak, just plugged along the trail instinctively, knowing exactly what each other was experiencing. And I remember thinking that this thick, sullen darkness was going to catch up with us and swallow us whole. As this thought manifested, we saw the mouth of the forest up ahead ready to regurgitate us from its gullet. And Dan, like a bear, leading her cubs to safety, timbered lightly towards the sun-laced opening. Upon first impact of our feet meeting concrete on the other side, Annie and I stated at the exact same time, "It's lifted." And it had. The music stopped instantly upon us exiting the forest, and the darkness that had stalked us vanished. Annie and I discussed what we had experienced later that evening, and both of us felt that we had an immediate feeling of heaviness and dread that was lifted from us as soon as we had left the forest behind. I'm no stranger to the spirit realm. It's something that I've always been connected to my entire life. But this particular experience, however, has always left me feeling sorrowful for the watcher of that forest. I wholeheartedly believe that they don't mean any harm, that they're simply protecting their land, a sovereign for every living species that thrives in the forest, and a host for every creature who calls it home. Thank you, forest, for allowing us to enjoy your beauty. And as for the watcher of the forest, I'm sorry that we intruded without being welcomed first. I hope Grandfather's sun shines brightly upon you, and Grandmother Moon keeps you well. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to unclejosh.truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. And if you have a true scary story about Halloween, please send that in immediately. Looking forward to another great Halloween extravaganza this year. Follow me on social media, links to that are in the description. And if you're catching this on YouTube and you like what you heard and saw, why not give it a thumbs up? Leave a comment. I'd love to know what you thought of the stories. And if you're not a subscriber, hey, become a subscriber today. Maybe even tell a friend about my channel. I sure would appreciate it. It does help out with the algorithms. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, Be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.